Hello everyone and welcome to my course on building REST API with Nodejs, Express and MongoDB. My name is Dev Pro and I'm going to be an instructor in this course. So let's quickly have a look at the REST API that we are going to build in this course. So as you can see, this is the API architecture that we are going to implement. So at the bottom, if you can see, there is this REST client. Okay. So your REST client can be anything. It can be a web browser, native Android device or the iOS device. Okay, any sort of client that can interact with the HTTP protocol. So as soon as the REST client send the request, it will be handled by the routes in our Node.js server. Okay. Now from the routes we will make various decisions. Okay, so let's say you sometimes want to validate some of the stuff before proceeding further, such as validating the token, okay, or maybe validating the request data present in the payload or even in the query params. Okay, so there are a couple of checks that you want to perform before proceeding the request further. So for that we'll be implementing middleware. Okay, so middleware will perform all sort of checks, and if any sort of validation fails, then it will basically send this error back to the client. Okay, and if the validation is success, then it will basically transfer the request to the controller, and here in the controller we are going to prepare the data that is required by the service. Okay, and controller will basically call the service, and service is where you basically write the business logic. Okay, so here we will interact with the database to get the data, and service will then transfer this data back to the controller, and controller will finally send the response to the client. Okay, so this is the end-to-end flow that we are going to implement. And if you are wondering why do we need service instead of writing the business logic in controller itself, so let me just tell you that as of now we haven't implemented anything, but just for the sake of answering this, I would like to tell you that the controller is nothing but a callback to a route, right? So this has access to the request response object, whereas service are basically normal function. Okay, so once you write your business logic in a normal function, what you can do is you can basically reuse this particular logic. Okay, but if you would have written in the controller, you wouldn't be able to reuse it. Okay, since those are not normal function, those are callback function which has access to the request response object. Okay, so if we write our business logic in a normal function, it can be reused. Okay, and you will not violate the dry principle, which is do not repeat yourself. Okay, so it will help you a lot because a lot of service will call internally other service to get the data. And let me just explain you by example how this reusable service is going to help us. So as you can see on the screen, consider this example where we have two API. The first one is to get the user detail, and the second one is to get the order detail, right, of a particular user. So in the user detail API, what you do is you basically ask for the user ID in the path parameter, and you simply go to the user detail service and fetch the data from the database and give response back to the client. Okay, and in case of order detail, we basically want to fetch the order detail as well as the user detail, right? So you first of all go to the order detail service through routes controller. Okay, and here in the order detail service, you basically interact with the database and get the order detail. Okay, but now you also want the user detail along with the order detail, right? So one way that you can do is by simply again hitting the database and fetching the user detail again. Or what you can do is, since you already have written your business logic inside of the user detail service, which is simply a function residing in a particular file, what you can do is from the order detail service, you can simply call this function. Okay, this service is nothing but a function. So you can simply call this function, pass the user ID, and that particular user detail service will return you the user detail itself. So what you have done is here you have just used the existing business logic, you haven't wrote it again. Okay, so this way you are basically reusing the existing piece of code, which is a good practice. Okay, and at the end we are also going to document our API using the Swagger library. So this course has everything you need to build the REST API with Node.js, Express and MongoDB. So I'm so excited to share all my knowledge and the learnings with you, and I hope to see you in my course.